and there was no convincing evidence provided by Israel. This is basically the Iraq WMD hoax, wherein Dick Cheney, got the intelligence. He knew there was no Iraq WMD, so he ordered it to be fabricated, including through torture.
Welcome back, everybody. If this is your first time here, you picked a genuinely wild video to start with. So here is what you are about to watch. A panel of commentators, journalists, and a combat veteran sit down to debate whether America should get directly involved in the conflict with Iran, and what starts as a political discussion turns into something much more heated. One side is convinced the threat is real and action is necessary. The other side starts pulling out historical receipts, and things get very uncomfortable very fast. The moment one panelist compares the entire justification for this potential war to one of the biggest intelligence failures in modern American history, the room shifts completely. You stay with this one all the way through because the ending is genuinely not what you would expect, especially considering who delivers the final verdict. Before we get into it, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are watching from right now. Honestly, one of my favorite parts of every video is seeing how many different countries show up in the comments. Alright, let's get into it.
What do you say to the Supreme Leader of Iran who says that they will not do?
Say good luck.
And what is the end game?
Say it?
I know the patience run out.
It's already run out. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
You can take out.
Yeah, they had 60 days and a big, 60 days, plenty of time. And they made a mistake. Honestly, they made a mistake. Their country's in ruins. So many people are dead that shouldn't be dead. It's a very sad thing.
So, Emily, Donald Trump is about to make possibly the most consequential decision of his life. This is a man who's been persistently anti-war in his rhetoric, wanting to end wars, not start them, proud of the fact in his first term he didn't start any significant war. But here he might be actively engaging in starting an American war, albeit with Israel, against Iran. Do you not feel, after what happened with Iraq, after what happened with Afghanistan, do you not feel this is a massive roll of the dice? And that Tucker Carlson, in his pretty apocalyptic warning, someone who's a pro-Trump guy, voted for Trump, says this could end his presidency.
It's very dramatic and hysterical, if you ask me. Before I answer that question, I just want to point out that Aaron believes America has no right to interject into what's happening in Iran, but Hamas has the right to pull in October 7th and invade Israel because of the false narrative that they're occupied. So now moving on from that, I watched what Trump said this morning. I watched it live, actually. And I feel like the issue here is that everyone's equivocating what's happening in Iran to Iraq and Afghanistan. I'd argue that the people of Iran, the Persian people, are a bit more sophisticated than what Iraq was and what Afghanistan was, a little bit more secular. Half of them are resisting the regime, are calling for a regime change. Do I think it's America's burden to reassure that they have a new whatever you want to call it, supreme leader, president, hopefully something more democratic? No. However, I do believe that at the very least, if we get rid of their nuclear facilities, the whole world is a better place. Trust me, the entire Middle East will be happy. UAE, Saudi, all the countries that are going more Western will be thanking us for that. And at the very best, within Iran, once it's in ruins, as Trump said, it won't be in ruins, we'll get a B-2 bomb. But once they have the opportunity to, they can overthrow the regime and state what it was pre-79. They don't need to be oppressed by their own anymore. The Iranian people are taking the streets. And they're not chanting death to America anymore. They're chanting death to the dictator. So I feel like they're ready for this change. And it's not Iraq and it's not Afghanistan.
I mean, the parallel with Iraq, though, I would say is quite clear in that that was fought on what turned out to be an entirely false pretext that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And here there is a belief put out by Prime Minister Netanyahu that Iran is imminently about to create a nuclear bomb, but nobody else outside of Israel.
He said that then, too.
The moment Piers asks Emily whether this whole situation feels like a roll of the dice, after Iraq, after Afghanistan, and Emily responds by calling Tucker Carlson's warnings dramatic and hysterical, that is where I need you to pay close attention, because she didn't engage with the argument, she dismissed it, and there is a massive difference between those two things. Emily said this: the Persian people are a bit more sophisticated than Iraq or Afghanistan, a little more secular, and I don't even disagree with that specific point. Persian culture is ancient, the population is highly educated, and yes, a significant portion of Iranians genuinely want change. But here is where the argument completely falls apart. She then says, if we get rid of their nuclear facilities, the whole world is a better place. Trust me. The entire Middle East will be happy. Trust me. That is the argument. 2 words: no verified intelligence, no diplomatic framework, no independent confirmation. And you have to understand, that specific kind of confidence is worth examining carefully, because history has a well-documented pattern of what follows it. The certainty before the mission, the absolute conviction that it would be fine, that things would stabilize, that people would be grateful, and then years later, everyone goes quiet and moves on to the next crisis. Piers keeps pressing the Iraq parallel, and Emily keeps brushing it off like the comparison is somehow absurd. But the parallel isn't about whether 2 countries are identical. It's about the pattern of justifying consequential action with intelligence that cannot be independently verified, coming from sources with a direct and obvious interest in the outcome. That pattern doesn't care what country you apply it to.
Yeah, but nobody else outside of Israel seems to agree. I mean, Scott, this is the dilemma for Donald Trump, is that there is a part of his support that's dragging him into engaging in this war, but there's another...
Due diligence? Come on, he's not that naive.
Well, the problem is that all those whose specific job it is to do that due diligence are saying that Iran is nowhere near it. And that's what would stop me in my tracks if I was president of the United States. Is like, am I going to believe the Israelis, led by Netanyahu, who's been saying this for decades, without actual evidence that it's about to create a bomb, or not?
I don't think we know whether or not he was presented with evidence by Netanyahu. I don't think Trump shows all of the reports to every single person in the United States or abroad. I really have a very hard time believing Netanyahu called him, said, hey, bro, trust me, they have a nuclear weapon. And Trump was like, yeah, let's get involved. I think we know it's a little bit more.
That's exactly what happened, given that Trump is ignoring what his own director of national intelligence said, which has been bolstered in recent days by leaks to CNN and the New York Times, in which as Scott mentioned earlier, even the latest intelligence reports say the same thing. And there was no convincing evidence provided by Israel. This is basically the Iraq WMD hoax, wherein Dick Cheney, got the intelligence. He knew there was no Iraq WMD, so he ordered it to be fabricated, including through torture. This is basically the Iraq WMD hoax, except this time Trump isn't bothering to fabricate. He's just outsourcing the job to Israel.
Okay, Scott. And like I said, this is a hell of a roll of the dice if Trump pulls the trigger on getting involved in this. I mean, I do think it's going to be extraordinarily consequential.
Yeah. Well, and look, he should not get involved at all, and Israel should call it off right now, short of regime change. The idea that, and this reminds me of the funniest thing that Nancy Mace said in that interview was, oh, yeah, well, you know what, we'll just kill the regime, and then the people will rise up, and, they'll just figure it out. It'll be fine. This is exactly what I'll never forget Representative Bob Dornan in 2011 talking about how, yes, we should support al-Qaeda to overthrow the government in Damascus, Syria, because, well, we don't know who's going to replace him, but I'm sure someone will come to the fore, he said. And now who came to the fore? First, the Islamic State bin Ladenite caliphate that was so bad that America had to launch Iraq War III to destroy it again, in alliance with Iran, by the way, providing them direct air cover as they took back to Crete. But anyway, and then after that, now al-Qaeda has broken out of the Idlib province, the al-Nusra Front, and sacked Damascus last December, and are the ruling regime there, now recognized by Donald Trump. That's who came to the fore in Syria when America got rid of the secular Alawite dictatorship.
This is the part that I think deserves the most attention. Scott makes a point that should give everyone pause. The analysts whose job is specifically to assess these situations, the people with actual access and actual accountability, are on record saying Iran is nowhere near a nuclear weapon. Not close. Not weeks away. That is the official assessment. Then Aaron delivers what I think is one of the most precise observations of the entire debate. He draws a comparison to a documented historical episode where senior officials received intelligence, recognized it didn't support the conclusion they needed, and ordered it to be shaped until it did. That is not a conspiracy theory. It is on the historical record. Government investigations confirmed it. Multiple books have been written about it by people who were inside the room. And then Aaron follows up with something even sharper. He says, this time the justification isn't even being assembled domestically. It's simply being outsourced to a foreign government. Think about what that actually means structurally. When your own intelligence community's public assessment says one thing, and that gets set aside in favor of a briefing from a foreign government that has a clear stake in the outcome, what is actually driving the decision? That is a serious question that deserves a serious answer. Scott's Syria example right after this is not just colorful commentary. After the Syrian government fell, it wasn't moderates who filled the vacuum. It was whoever was most organized and most prepared. That's not opinion. That's what happened on the ground.
Iran is different. Yes, it's much more sophisticated. You mean their population is almost 100 million people, and that there are Sunni Arabs and Shiite Persians and Azeris and Baluchs and all kinds of different people that you've never heard of, with all of their own factional differences, religious and sectarian differences, and historical grudges, who are sure to go to bloody civil war to take over. You say, oh, there's foreigners waiting to come in. It'll be just like before 79 when they were free? You mean when they were under the American-backed sock puppet dictator, the Shah Reza Pahlavi, which is who they're talking about parachuting his son in now. Maybe that's all Trump meant, Piers, when he gave that speech in Qatar denouncing neoconservatism. He said, forget democracy. Maybe he just meant we're going to reinstall His Royal Majesty, His Highness, to be the iron-fisted monarch of Persia again. Anyone listening to this who thinks that that is credible, that that's going to work, that any new regime America installs there is not going to immediately face a vast insurgency from the people of that vast and mountainous country are insane.
Okay,
You need to get your head checked. Every one of you people.
Let me give the final word to Rob O'Neill. Rob, if you were able to speak to President Trump today as he mulls up what to do here, what would you advise him? To go in?
Well, I would advise
out?
him to definitely sit down with his close advisors and don't be so eager to start bombing anywhere. We've already admitted that we're fueling their planes. We've got refuelers all over the place. But I mean, what Scott just said was pretty much right. I agreed with most of it. And the regime change doesn't work. So you got to be really, really careful with, hey, the people will just rise up and we'll see what happens. Because like Scott was just saying, there are so many groups over there, you don't know who they are. And sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Again, so complex, a lot put out there, but you know, not all wrong. So no, I would say be very careful to include who you trust, because there are people in the United States government and the Israeli government who really, really want war for different reasons other than just protecting the homeland. We've heard it before. Listen to your people, do your research, and just, you know, take a pause. I've always said, especially in gunfights, if you want to be fast, slow down.
Scott's Libya comparison is historically important, and I want to make sure people actually sit with it. After the Libyan government collapsed, weapons that had been centrally controlled dispersed across an entire region and ended up arming groups that Western governments then spent years trying to contain. The country fractured. Documented atrocities followed. The people who said it would be fine moved on very quickly. Iran is not Libya. It is not Syria. It has nearly 100 million people, multiple ethnic groups, deep sectarian layers, and a national identity thousands of years old. Scott's point is that anyone who believes a foreign-backed transition of power in a country that complex won't produce serious internal conflict needs to look more carefully at how this has played out historically. Blunt, yes, but worth taking seriously. The pattern has been tested. Remove a government, assume the right people rise naturally, discover too late that power vacuums get filled by whoever is most organized and most ruthless. History has run this experiment multiple times. It keeps producing recognizable results. And here is what makes the final moments of this segment so striking. The person who closes it out is Rob O'Neill, a decorated combat veteran who has lived the gap between how these operations get sold publicly and how they actually unfold on the ground. He says Scott was pretty much right. That regime change doesn't work the way it gets described, and then he adds something that stays with you. There are people inside governments who want this outcome for reasons that have nothing to do with protecting the homeland. That is not coming from a policy commentator. That is someone speaking from direct operational experience. And when the most combat-credentialed person in the room lands on the side of the skeptics, that carries a different kind of weight. The question that lingers after all of this is the same one history keeps raising. At what point does a pattern become undeniable? Let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, and I'll see you in the next one.